It was late October, and the leaves in the Carpathian Mountains had turned a deep golden red. 4 friends, Andrei, Soren, Ilinka, and Bogdan, were preparing for their final motorbike trip of the year. They had been riding together since university, exploring the forgotten corners of Romania, drawn to places untouched by time. This time, Andrei had suggested a new route, one not found on Google Maps but marked on an old, torn paper map he'd bought at a flea market. "It's called Strigoi Valley," he said, tapping a faint ink line. "It's supposed to be beautiful and completely empty." The others raised eyebrows. Soren joked, "If it's not on the map, maybe there's a reason." But curiosity won. The name, Strigoi, lingered in the air, familiar yet unsettling. In old Romanian tales, Strigoi were said to be restless spirits, souls that refused to move on. But that was folklore, of course. Just stories. They packed light, sleeping bags, a tent, cameras, and enough fuel to last the weekend. The sky that morning was a pale gray, and as they rode westward into the hills, cell signals dropped and the roads grew narrow. Asphalt gave way to dirt paths. Time seemed to slow. By late afternoon, they passed through a tiny village, just a few wooden houses and a stone well. An old woman stood near the roadside, watching them without moving. Her eyes locked onto them as they passed. Ilinka waved politely, but the woman didn't respond. As they stopped to check directions, the woman slowly approached and whispered, "Don't go past the forest. Not tonight. That valley forgets people." Her words hung heavily in the still mountain air. The group exchanged uneasy looks, but Bogdan laughed. "Every village has its ghost stories. Let's not spook ourselves." They rode on, the engines echoing through the trees. Behind them, the village vanished like mist, as if it had never been there. As the sun dipped below the mountains, the forest thickened. The trees arched overhead, forming a tunnel of shadows. The road twisted sharply. At one bend, Andrei slowed and pointed. There, behind a cluster of trees, stood a small, stone church worn by time. No path led to it. It shouldn't have been there. But it was. Soren pulled up beside him. "I didn't see that on the map." Ilinka shivered. "Let's just keep moving." They did. But none of them noticed the old wooden sign, half buried in leaves behind them. It read, "Welcome to Strigoi Valley." By nightfall, the forest around them grew dense and silent. No wind, no birds, just the sound of tires crunching damp earth. Their headlights cut through the fog like knives. But the shadows between the trees remained heavy and still. They found a small clearing near the edge of a hill and decided to camp. The forest opened just enough for their tents and a small fire. The motorbikes were parked in a circle, headlights off, engines cooling in the cold night air. Bogdan laughed as he unpacked his gear. "That old woman should see us now. Safe and sound. Nothing to worry about." But Ilinka didn't laugh. She had felt something strange. The moment they entered the valley, like being watched, she kept it to herself. Andrei pulled out the old paper map again. Its edges were torn, ink faded. The name Strigoi Valley had been scribbled over in dark pencil, as if someone had tried to erase it. But underneath, the lines led to a symbol, one he hadn't noticed before. A black cross inside a circle. It sat exactly where they had found the stone church. Soren leaned in. "What is that? A cemetery?" Andrei shrugged. "Could be. Or maybe just a marker." That night, the forest did not sleep. Long after the fire died, strange sounds circled their tents, like footsteps moving just outside, careful not to be seen. Ilinka sat up in her sleeping bag, heart pounding. She looked at the others. They were asleep, undisturbed. Then she heard it, soft breathing. But it wasn't coming from inside the tents. It was just outside hers. She froze. The breathing stopped. A minute passed. Then another. She slowly unzipped the tent flap just enough to peek out. No one was there. But the footprints were. In the damp soil just a few feet away, bare feet, small, like a child's. The toes pointed toward her tent, then away, disappearing into the woods. The next morning, no one believed her. Bogdan said she probably dreamed it. Soren checked for animals but found nothing. Still, Andrei seemed unsettled. He showed them something from his helmet camera. It was recording all night, he said. But around 3 in the morning, it glitched. He played the footage. The night was quiet at first, trees swaying slightly, nothing unusual. Then came the static. It lasted for about 10 seconds. When the image returned, the camera had shifted. It was now pointed directly at their tents, as if someone or something had picked it up and placed it there. Ilinka stepped back, face pale. No one had touched that camera. At least, no one they knew. The group packed quickly the next morning. The forest felt colder, the air heavier, like it was watching. No one said much. Even Bogdan was quiet, his usual jokes missing. They all felt it now, something wasn't right. Their plan was simple, find a way out. But the path they had taken into the valley was gone. Where there had been a clear trail yesterday, now there was only dense forest. Trees where there had been open ground. No tire tracks, no flattened grass, as if they had never arrived. Soren checked his phone again. Still no signal. We must have taken a wrong turn, he said. Let's try backtracking. They rode slowly, engines growling low. Fog settled in waves between the trees, hiding everything beyond a few meters. Ilinka gripped her handlebars tightly, eyes scanning the woods. Every shadow looked like a figure. Every sound felt too close. Then they found it, the stone church again. It stood exactly where they had passed it yesterday, down to the crooked cross leaning against its roof. But we didn't turn around, Andrei said. We went straight. No one answered. The fog deepened. Bogdan stepped off his bike. I'm going in. Maybe someone's inside. Wait, Ilinka called, but he was already pushing the heavy wooden door. The inside was colder than outside. Dust hung in the air like ash. Cracked stone walls were covered in faded symbols. At the far end stood an altar made of dark wood, old and scarred. Behind it, a single mirror. It was tall, framed in rusted metal, too new to belong in a place this old. Bogdan stepped in front of it and stopped. The reflection was wrong. It showed him, but behind him stood a second figure, tall, unmoving, its face hidden in shadow. He turned quickly. No one there. He looked back. The figure in the mirror was gone. He backed away, shaking his head. Let's go now. The others didn't ask questions. They just left. But as they rode, something changed. Ilinka's motorbike began to stall, coughing like it couldn't breathe. Then Soren's headlight flickered and died. One by one, their bikes gave out, all in the same clearing where they had camped. They checked the tanks, still full. No mechanical issues, just silence. Andrei stood still. Maybe we're not meant to leave. Bogdan looked at him sharply. Don't start. I'm serious, Andrei replied. What if the valley wants us here? The sun dipped behind the trees faster than it should have. Shadows stretched long across the ground. They were back where they started. But it didn't feel like the same place anymore. The silence had changed. Now it felt like listening, waiting. They set up camp again, though it didn't feel like a choice. The clearing seemed to draw them in, like it was the only place left. The trees around them stood unnaturally still. No wind passed through their branches. No birds sang. Bogdan worked on the bikes, trying everything he knew. They're fine, he said, confused. Everything looks perfect. But they won't start. Ilinka sat quietly by the fire, hugging her knees. Maybe we should never have come here. Soren, ever the realist, nodded slowly. Maybe this place was never meant to be found. That night they didn't sleep well. Andrei stayed awake, listening. Around midnight he heard something. A whisper. Not in the trees. Not in the wind. It was close. Inside the camp. He reached for his flashlight and scanned the dark. Nothing. Then he looked down. In the dirt near his sleeping bag, something had been written with a stick or a finger. You are not the first. He called the others over. They stared at the message in silence. Who wrote this? Ilinka asked. No one was awake, Soren replied. Bogdan's voice was low. That we know of. They decided to search the area before sunrise. Just a few meters into the woods, Soren found something buried beneath leaves, an old metal box, rusted and heavy. Inside were torn pages, black and white photos, and a journal written in careful handwriting. The journal told of another group, 3 men and 1 woman, who came to Strigoi Valley more than 50 years ago. The entries started normal. Then slowly they changed. The handwriting grew shaky. The sentences became shorter. The final page simply said, "It follows us now." Even in the mirror. Ilinka dropped the book. They all turned, almost in sync, to look at one another. No one wanted to say it, but they were beginning to feel it too. Andrei took out his phone just to check. No signal. But the camera worked. He turned it on and held it up. filming the group as they stood in the dim morning light. Later, when he reviewed the footage, he would see it. Just a brief flash between frames, a face behind Bogdan, pale, still watching. They didn't speak much that morning. No one mentioned the face in the camera. No one mentioned the journal, though it now sat quietly in Andrei's backpack, like a weight pressing down on all of them. Instead, they packed their things in silence and walked. The motorbikes were no longer an option. It felt pointless trying to fix them again. The trail had vanished, the fog had thickened, and every direction looked the same. Trees, fog, silence. Ilinka suggested they head uphill, hoping to find higher ground. Maybe from above they could see a way out. Maybe they could catch a signal. Maybe anything. As they climbed, they passed old stone markers half swallowed by moss. Strange symbols had been carved into them, circles crossed by diagonal lines, shapes like bent stars. None of them could say what they meant, but the designs felt old, older than the forest itself. By early afternoon, they reached a ridge overlooking a deep valley. But instead of relief, they felt something else. Dread. The valley below was darker than it should have been. Trees grew in crooked lines like veins across the land. At the very center stood a tall figure, not moving, not walking, just standing. Andrei zoomed in with his phone's camera. No face, no details, just the unmistakable shape of a person staring directly up at them. Then, without warning, the phone shut off. He tried to turn it back on. Nothing. They backed away from the ridge. Soren was the first to speak. "That's not possible. We're not alone here." "No," Ilinka whispered. "We never were." As they returned to camp, something was waiting for them. Their tents had been slashed open, their gear scattered. The journal gone, in its place a mirror, the same mirror from the stone church. But now it stood in the middle of the clearing, upright, untouched. None of them had brought it there. Bogdan stepped forward cautiously, his reflection rippling slightly in the glass. "It's just a mirror," he said, forcing a laugh. "Maybe someone's playing a prank, right?" No one answered. Then the mirror shifted. Not physically, but inside it. Their reflections didn't move in sync. For a second, Ilinka saw her own image tilt its head the wrong way. Andrei stepped back. "Don't look at it." But it was too late. A crack formed across the glass, spreading like a spider web, then stopped. At its center, a shape began to appear. Not a face, not a person. Something else. Something old. Watching, waiting. That night, the fire would not stay lit. They tried everything, dry branches, fuel from the bikes, even pages from their notebooks, but every flame sputtered and died, as if the forest itself rejected the light. They sat in the cold, wrapped in their jackets, surrounded by a silence too deep to feel natural. The mirror remained where it stood untouched, reflecting only darkness. Soren had not spoken for hours. He stared at the trees, eyes distant, like listening to something far away. When Ilinka finally asked if he was all right, he only said, "It's calling." "What is?" she asked. He turned to her slowly. "You don't hear it?" They didn't sleep. At some point, Andrei began hearing whispers again, low and distant, his name repeated over and over. Not screamed, not even spoken, just breathed like wind through leaves. When he looked around, no one else reacted. As if it was only for him, at dawn Soren was gone. His sleeping bag was empty, still zipped. No sign of struggle, no footprints. Only the mirror now showed something different. In the reflection, Soren stood in the clearing, staring directly into the glass. But when they turned around, nothing. Ilinka touched the mirror, cold as ice. "Where did he go?" she whispered. Andrei didn't answer. His hands were shaking. Bogdan, trying to stay calm, grabbed his backpack. "We can't stay. This valley isn't just cursed. It's alive." He pulled out the old map again, hoping to find anything, some marking, some note. But now the paper was blank. The lines had faded overnight. The valley was erasing itself. Or maybe it was erasing them. As they prepared to leave on foot, Ilinka noticed something in the distance. Shapes moving between the trees. Tall, silent, slow. Not animals. Not people. Shadows drifting just out of focus. Andrei held up his phone to record them, but the screen stayed black. Not off. Just blank. No signal, no interface, no camera. Like the device had forgotten how to function, they turned to run, following no path, just instinct. Branches clawed at their clothes. Fog swallowed the trail behind them. The forest had changed again. Endless, circular, alive. Eventually they stopped, breathless, and looked around. They were back in the clearing. The mirror was waiting. This time there were 3 reflections, but only 2 of them were real. The clearing was silent. Not peaceful, empty. The mirror stood where it always did, still and tall, though the crack across its surface had widened. Faint light from the morning sky reflected off its jagged center, like an open wound. Bogdan was the first to speak. "That's not us," he said, staring at their reflections. In the glass, the 3 figures stood still, but the movements didn't match. When Andrei tilted his head, his reflection didn't follow. When Ilinka stepped back, her image stayed still for a full second before catching up. It was as if the mirror was thinking. Ilinka whispered, "This isn't just showing us. It's studying us." They both looked at Bogdan, but his reflection was gone. Only 2 remained. Ilinka turned. "Bogdan?" He was no longer behind them. They called his name again and again, but the forest swallowed their voices. Not an echo returned. Andrei's hands trembled. "We need to go, now." But the clearing was shifting. Trees were closer than before, pressing inward. The sky above had turned a darker shade of gray. Somewhere in the distance, a low sound began to grow, like stone dragging against stone. Then the mirror flickered. The reflections began to smile. Ilinka gasped. I didn't smile. Neither did Andrei. The reflections started moving on their own, no longer mimicking. They stepped forward, pressing against the inside of the glass, as though the surface were soft like water. Ilinka turned and ran into the trees, pulling Andrei with her. They didn't stop until their legs gave out. The fog grew thicker. Time blurred. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. They found a road, not wide, not paved, but real. A car passed, an old truck with 2 farmers inside. The driver stopped. "You're not supposed to be here," he said softly. They didn't argue. They got in. As the truck drove away, Ilinka looked back. The forest was gone. Only an empty field remained. Andrei said nothing the whole ride back to the village. But later, when the farmers dropped them off and left, he finally broke the silence. "We made it," he said. "We're out." Ilinka nodded. But when she glanced at the store window beside them, her breath caught. The reflection showed them standing there, only slightly off. Her hand was raised. She hadn't moved. Andrei was looking at her, but in the reflection, he was staring into the glass, unmoving. The crack had followed them,